Hello, and welcome to InTrend, a USLI podcast where we discuss the latest trends, ideas, and insights facing the insurance industry today. I am your host, Melissa Kambayashi, and today I am joined by my guest, Susan Cianciola, team leader on USLI's loss control team. Susan has 20 years of insurance industry experience and is integral in educating USLI policyholders on how to prevent loss. I'm very excited to be joined by Susan today to discuss catastrophic claims, managing increased risk with better preparation. Let's dive into it. Hi, Susan. Thank you so much for joining us on InTrend.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So let's dive into the topic of catastrophic claims
Yes.
and how we can best prepare. So for our listeners who may not be familiar, what are catastrophic claims and how do they present?
Sure. So catastrophic claims, CAT claims, we like to call it, is a large-scale event. So hurricanes, wildfires, a hailstorm, flooding, all of those types of large-scale losses that present itself across a large section of maybe the country or the state that are affecting people, we call those CAT claims.
So you've given us some examples of some catastrophic events that we're seeing, but those are not the only types that we've been seeing in recent times. Am I correct?
Yes, and it's so much more wide scale. So gone are the days where, you're just seeing tornadoes in Tornado Alley. Sometimes it's moving to the right or left. We really haven't seen that before. Wildfires are occurring in more than just California. We always think it's just California that have wildfires, but you may recall it was just a few weeks ago where New Jersey unfortunately had a wildfire event, and it was widespread, and it's just something that state has never seen before. Texas, you think Texas is warm. They had a deep freeze a couple of years ago, and those folks just aren't used to that cold weather and what to do about it. You have to turn off your water pipes and let it a little drip. Frozen pipes bursting. That was a few large losses for us as a company, as an insurance industry. It was one of the biggest scale events that we've ever seen in history. So, there are these types of catastrophic events happening across the country, and they are widespread, and they're really happening everywhere.
Right. So why do you think we're seeing such an increase in frequency and severity of these types of catastrophic events?
Sure. Changes in weather patterns, climate change. There's just been so many changes in the atmosphere that it is really causing these catastrophic losses to be happening across the country. Think of coastal areas like Florida or the New Jersey shore and those beautiful shore houses that just look so nice along the water. But no one really thinks about, what if a hurricane happens? Or what if you get 5 or 6 inches of rain and your first floor is flooding? So these are the things that folks should be thinking about if they're a business owner or they own some type of property in these areas.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned, New Jersey, and we don't see many hurricanes in this area, but there was a pretty severe one that hit in October of 2012, Hurricane Sandy.
Yes.
And that really took a toll on the Jersey Shore.
It did. Yes. They called it Superstorm Sandy. And, just being prepared for all of that water intake that was coming into properties and the loss of electricity and down trees, that takes days, even weeks to get back up and running again. That could be for your business, your home. Evacuations happen. Some homes were just disseminated and they're having to rebuild. And it really starts to have you think about, safety, loss prevention. What would you do in a loss and how you can prepare ahead of time?
Right. So it sounds like these catastrophic events obviously are unpredictable.
Yes,
So does that make it more difficult to assess risk?
it does. Underwriting is hard, and we would love to be able to say that we can predict what's going to happen here and where we prefer to write risks and where we don't. We have a lot of great tools, but the unpredictability of the atmosphere and these storms today are making it very difficult.
So what types of loss are we seeing with these types of catastrophic claims? I think we typically think property damage, tree falls on a house, flooding happens in a basement or
Yes.
maybe multiple levels of a home.
Yes.
But that's not the only type of loss that we're seeing with these cat claims.
Yes, yes, and don't underestimate what can happen in a cat claim. Think of the small business owner. Think of, the restaurants, the bars, the little deli shop. Think of all the places that you like to go in your own neighborhood. They need to be thinking about their inventory, and how they can have some loss prevention techniques to make sure that they don't have a huge loss in property as well as their inventory, putting things up on shelves. Or maybe if you have enough time and a storm is coming, maybe you move that inventory physically and get that to somewhere else where it's, not going to get ruined. Food, perishable items, clothing, anything that they're keeping in inventory. If a storm comes or if a lot of water comes, that's all damaged goods. So, having some type of a plan to try to have some loss prevention in that area would be ideal.
And I think you're also going to suffer from business interruption loss, right? From a small business perspective.
Absolutely. Yes. I know that, our minds always go to property and property losses. But yes, time waiting for a contractor or a claims adjuster to come in, you don't have power, you don't have electricity, you have a couple of inches of water in your establishment, you're not going to be able to open. And that could go on for days or weeks. So, those are things that we can't get around and we don't have control over, but have a plan so that you know ahead of time how to execute that plan and try to prevent as much as you can from a loss.
So you started to give our listeners some tips on what to do to
Yes.
make sure that you're better prepared. So what can a policyholder do, individual, small business owner? What can they do to better prepare for these types of events?
Yeah, sure. Great question. Have a plan. You need a plan. I love talking about the emergency kit because the emergency kit is something that you can pick up physically and bring with you if you have to evacuate, if you lose power, food, water, blankets, changes of clothes. These are just simple things that could take 5 minutes or less. Put it in a box or a bin, know where it is, and be able to grab it in a pinch. I think some folks might not think about all those important documents that maybe you have stored in a drawer or in a file folder somewhere. That could be, mortgage information, lease information, contact numbers. If you don't have power and your cell phone died, what numbers do you need? Your insurance agent's number. These are all things that you can have handy at the time of a loss or very quickly when you have to evacuate. Have them in a sealed bag. They won't get wet. And you know that you can grab that and that you can go. That's really the best way to prepare. There are so many things that can go in the emergency kit, but having them is key.
I think also probably taking inventory of what you have, right?
Yes, absolutely. Taking inventory, having lease documents, keeping receipts. I love to talk about the cell phone video. Everybody has a smartphone and everybody's taking pictures and using video. Use that to your advantage. Take 5 to 10 minutes and video or take photos of all the inventory you have. Open up drawers, open up closets, because when a tragic event occurs, it's really hard to close your eyes and think about those tangible items that you lost or that are damaged when there's so much tragedy happening around you.
Absolutely. Would you recommend that a policyholder also review their policy before an event happens?
Yes. We're in the insurance industry, right? But for those that aren't, it just, they just don't understand what the policy says, and they really might not understand what they're covered for and what they're not. And there could be some great opportunities to have that conversation with your agent and really understand, hey, I live in this area, and while it may not be prone to wildfires or, hurricanes, we are prone to a lot of rain or wind. Am I covered if that event happens? What should I prepare for if I'm not? And there's going to be out-of-pocket expense.
Absolutely. So it's important to know what is in your policy.
Yes, it's important to know what's in your policy. And it's important to ask, are there any options to have additional coverages that may cover you? I mean, we always think about how beautiful the coastline is and having those homes and businesses, but are you covered for flood insurance? Do you have the opportunity to get flood insurance? These are things and questions that you might want to have to make sure that you do not suffer a catastrophic event.
Those are some great tips for our policyholders. What do you think, Susan, our insurance agents and brokers can do to help their clients be better prepared.
Yes. I always say, prehab instead of rehab, right? So,
Absolutely.
there's so many things they can do. But first and foremost, be in communication with your insureds. Create some type of a pending system where you're contacting them maybe biannually or quarterly. So don't just be contacting them right before their renewals are up. Have some type of list or system where, especially those that would be affected by some type of catastrophic claim or loss, have tools that they can get from you. You be the driver, you be the expert when it comes to loss control. We have our business resource center here at USLI. It is chock full of resources, videos, checklists, real quick read safety content. We try to put our agents and our brokers in the driver's seat and make them the experts without having to create all this additional content. It can be texted, it could be emailed out, or you could just be reading from it just to give them some tips on, hey, if a loss occurs, if you can, let's start to mitigate that a little bit and, maybe seal up the window or get everything off the floor. There's certainly a time where you're waiting before a claims adjuster or a contractor can come and fully mitigate that loss. So there's so many tips and things where we try to put the agent in the driver's seat and be able to share all of the loss prevention and safety content with the policyholder.
Those are some great tips for our insurance agents and brokers. And it sounds like there's some really great resources available for agents, brokers, as well as policyholders.
Yes. And never underestimate the battery-powered radio. They're still around, believe it or not. And when you lose power and now your cell phone or your iPad died, you still want to know what's happening. Is the storm still occurring? When is it safe to go outside and assess the damage or, what happened outside in your neighborhood or your business? So I also always recommend to have a battery-powered radio. You can get National Weather Service. There's AM dials. Know which channel you're turning to so you're not frantic and trying to figure that out in an event like a storm, hurricane, wildfire, etc.
More great tips, Susan. Thank you so much. So it sounds like the takeaway is that while these catastrophic events are increasing in frequency and severity, there are many things that we can do, both policyholders, insurance agents, and brokers, to be in the best position to handle these losses.
Absolutely. Yes. Have a plan. Don't wait. Know what coverages you have and really know if you are in a pinch and you have to get out, you have to leave a business, your home. What are you bringing with you? It should already be prepared ahead of time. And, I think that's the best way to prevent any additional losses.
I appreciate those final thoughts, Susan. Thank you so much for joining us on InTrend. And thank you, listeners, for joining as well. We hope that you will join our next installment of InTrend.